Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, October 6th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, in which people just like you've called in and been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to those audio files even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app. It contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@yagain.org. And if we get a question or comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or your input. If you're available, we are live most of the weekdays from 11 a.m. to noon Central Time, and if you go to zoom.us, you can either open up a browser window and type in the meeting ID 853-2357-4173, or you can call one of the many numbers they list and enter the same ID number, 853-2357-4173, and you can join us live, which would give you the opportunity to listen in, speak up, share your video, or type in the chat room. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do any of those things, because it makes it so much easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we get feedback from people just like you. And as I like to mention, if you go and look at the highlight shows that have been curated out of the archives for the last 14 plus years, you'll see that the vast majority of those highlight shows are the product of people just like you calling and asking a question. So if you're so inclined, please do so. And understand that even if I'm in the middle of reading something or seem to be on a roll talking about something, your comments and questions are seen as a benefit and an addition, and we welcome them. So we're sitting here at about 11:06 on a Monday, and we have plenty of time for comments or questions, answers, or testimonials. I've been exploring a book. I've done several of the deep dive podcasts with Dr. Roger McFillin, including the number 189, Can Near-Death Experiences in Past Lives Reveal Our Purpose?, where he was sitting down with Stephanie Chevrier, Chevrier. And she's the creator of a viral Instagram account titled @live, Live, .deathless, or live deathless, where she shares scientific research on consciousness that most people have never heard of. And after discovering the Bigelow Institute of Consciousness studies, Stephanie went from skeptical agnostic to passionate researcher, uncovering rigorous scientific work happening in areas that challenge our understanding of reality itself. And it says her Instagram account has become a hub for evidence-based spirituality, attracting thousands who are curious about what mainstream science isn't telling us about consciousness, death, and human potential. So as a result of listening to that, probably twice, that podcast with Stephanie and Roger, it prompted me to get the book The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. The subtitle is The New Science of Spirituality and Our Quest for an Inspired Life. So, it's heartwarming for me, someone like me, to discover that people are really focused on trying to accumulate enough hard evidence to at least, how would I say that, begin adding credibility to what many people experience day in and day out in their lives. And so then if we've added some scientific credibility to it, then it's going to at least open the door for more discussion, at least help us stop the people that want to just shut the door and say there is nothing there, and that if you can't measure it and register it with your five senses, it doesn't exist, because there's a lack of consistency and clarity with that, because our five senses can't register ultraviolet or infrared. So we know there are things that our five senses can't register that are very real, and that if we don't take them into account when we're planning things, we don't have very much success. So, and of course, for my mind and the way it works, and I don't know whether this happened somewhere in college or in the grad school years, where something about the idea of being able to integrate a variety of different styles or approaches I either began to feel pressured to do that, or I just felt a natural tendency to do that. But it helps me in ways that I don't easily find words for. To look for the similarities between schools of thought or techniques, and to have my radar going and a little special alarms section in my personal radar for any indication that somebody's trying to say, this is the best, or this is the only, or this is the only way to get there. And because so many different spiritual traditions acknowledge that there are many, many paths that lead to the goal, if not all paths eventually lead to the goal. And this is what some of the teachings are. But it's been a serious struggle throughout most of my career, and in part because I watched all of the, I'll call it political or power jockeying. I came onto the scene during the period of time where psychologists were starting to move from the position of just testing technicians into the position of the providers of therapy. And psychiatrists were moving from the position of the providers of therapy and occasionally drugs for the really difficult situations to almost exclusively drug providers that don't do therapy. And many are they lack any kind of a training for therapy other than what they might have picked up in a residency. So there was a big push to try and seem like a hard science, because that's where the credibility rested, and that's where the leverage existed for people to be able to get reimbursement from drug companies.
Dr. Tim?
Yes.
Would you go backtrack? I didn't get to my pen in time to write down. You said Roger McFillin and Stephanie Chevrier. Is that her name?
Yeah, well, I'll spell it for you because I don't know how to. Yes, CHEVRIER.
Oh, it sounds like a French name. Okay. And it's
And
yeah.
it's at
Mm-hmm.
LIVE .deathless
Ooh, okay.
on Instagram. Live Deathless.
Okay.
So if you go to the Instagram account and type in at LIVE.deathless, you get access to her stuff. And of course, there's all kinds of references in this podcast, which that podcast is for an hour and 20 minutes. So there's all kinds of good stuff in it.
Mm. Well, maybe it's because it feels as if we're all roaring as fast as we can to a precipice, that maybe many of us are thinking about the nature of consciousness and death and afterlife and stuff like that. But I'm thinking about it, so I'm thinking it's very synchronous and fun that you're thinking about it and talking about it right now on the Monday radio show, Zoom show. Yeah, there were several scientists, and I can't tell you where I found this, were trying to explain the nature of consciousness, not that they knew what it was. In fact, that's how it ended up. All these scholarly people speaking about the fact that in the end of it all, they don't understand what consciousness is, and consciousness seems to be not only the bottom line, but the only way we are fully connected, because we all experience this thing of consciousness, which doesn't seem to have any attributes, unless you can say awareness is an attribute. And even maybe it isn't awareness until you're aware of your awareness. I don't know. Anyway, they're fussing with it and ending up their little talks with saying, well, maybe we just don't know anything. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, like way of mastery. And it's okay that you live in this divine ignorance because,
Hmm.
like the way of mastery itself says, your intellect was never designed to be your primary user interface with life. Your intellect is just this little tool
Mm.
that's occasionally the right fit for the job that you're supposed to pick up and use when it's appropriate, and then lay it down and use your awakened heart, or use your, you know, your ability to be aware and conscious without the judging, right? To stay in that open, relaxed, allowing space that is part of what the way of mastery says is the keys to the kingdom.
Right. And it seems as if the key sentence is to be asked to be shown, which doesn't mean somebody's going to write a formula on a blackboard. It's going to show you somewhere other than in your brain or in your thinking.
Yeah, but look at it this way: instead of what might get shown to you, what just notice what happens when I ask to be shown in the brain chemistry of a human being asking to be shown. What happens? The brain stays wide awake and alert. Remember us talking about how they've hooked people up to brain scans, and then they ask them, okay, they put their hand in their pocket and say, okay, what might I have in my pocket? And they watch the functional MRI and the QEEG neurofeedback just light up all over the place, because now the person's trying to figure out, what does Tim have in his pocket? And
Mm-hmm.
then he, shakes it a little bit and it doesn't make any rattling noise. So it's not keys or it's not change. And then he, you know, forms his hand into a fist and pulls his fist out and says, okay, it's in my hand. What might it be? Oh, now I know something about its size, and the brain is going. And then all of a sudden, Tim says, oh, it's my key fob for my car.
Mm.
And instantly the brain activity drops
Oh, wow.
markedly.
Interesting.
And so what happens when I go into a situation thinking I know something? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of that. Oh, now I
Yeah.
know it's just a key fob. My brain activity is really reduced. I want to go in wide open and open to learning and with that childlike curiosity. It it puts my brain status in a different state if I choose to go in open and questioning. It's literally a an adaptation that can aid in everything: survival, functioning,
Mm-hmm.
connection with others, because I'm open and I'm questioning and I'm allowing input and I'm integrating whatever gets input.
That is so fabulous. I never heard it that way. How open your mind is before you have an answer.
Yeah, when you're in the questioning state, you're open to learning, and
Mm.
then the neural activity is much higher. And so
Hmm.
if it's a really important situation, wouldn't you want your neural activity to be high? Wouldn't you want it to be
Sure.
awake and alert?
And not only are we not usually, but we're often a little nervous too, which shuts it down even further. Did I
Well,
shut
yeah.
you?
Yeah, when you say nervous, I think fear, right? Instead of
Right.
just nervous. And so
Yeah.
if my fear response gets to be intense enough, or I pour enough of my mind energy into that, then I flip over into that fight or flight response. And the first thing that happens in my energy system physiologically, Michael says there is no chemistry, there is no physiology, etc. But what happens within the energy system at that level is that less blood goes to my brain and less blood goes to my internal organs, and that extra blood goes to my back and my legs, so I'm ready to either run for my life or fight for my life. Because if I've made the determination, this is life or death, this is urgent, all I need to do is survive physically, right? Or I do whatever my reflexes tell me or my survival mechanisms tell me for 5 or 10 minutes, and then either the stress is over or I'm over, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, that's the system we were designed in. Just like we were designed to live more physically out in the world, in the elements, with a response to the elements, to have the capacity for hunting. This is another thing about how people want to put a label on certain people when they fidget a lot, or they jump from one activity to another, or they get the label attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder inattentive type, meaning your attention jumps around a lot, but you don't fidget physically. You're not hyperactive. Well, what if that was simply how we evolved as hunter-gatherers? Right? What if, as a hunter, all those qualities of not sitting still and scanning the environment and fidgeting and always ready to change direction or do something different, what if that was just how we evolved? And now we're trying to take people whose history energetically from their bloodline and their so-called body chemistry that had this evolutionary path toward what it is. Now they're trying to live in an environment that doesn't call for any of that, and that actually punishes those traits. So there are books like what's this one? A Hunter in a Farmer's World. It's been so well accepted that it's in its third edition. It's by Tom Hartman. Tom Hartman, and so he's the sole author, but the foreword is by Michael Popkin. So, instead of, this is one of the things that Dr. Roger McFillin does. He says, look, instead of pathologizing all of these emotions and traits and aspects of being human, let's understand them better.
Right.
And let's give them labels that allow us to work with them, not just drug them or lock them away and label them as bad or wrong.
He has an institute, doesn't he? Some sort of a facility, and it's near us here in Pennsylvania. It's about 20 minutes away, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Do you know about that?
Well, only what I hear at the beginning of his podcast.
Oh, okay.
But did you listen to that podcast I recommended last week of his,
yes, half of it. I didn't finish it. It was long, and
it's the miracle session that made him doubt the nature of healing?
No, I don't recognize that. It was on ADHD. Was that the one?
There's another one on ADHD, yeah.
Okay, maybe it wasn't the one then that you're talking about.
202, number 202. 203 is ADHD myths exposed. He
Oh,
does quite a few of them on ADHD and their
203
myths.
is the one I saw. I started, but I
And
didn't finish it. Okay.
202 is the one titled "The Session That Made Me Question Everything I Know About Healing."
Oh,
And what happened was I use the analogy of the way Eben Alexander was
yeah.
about his belief as a scientist. He just took the party line of scientists that says, human consciousness is simply the byproduct of random neural firings. It's
Right. I
just an
remember that.
accident, right? And
Yep.
then he had his own what Michael Ryce would call near life experience and was in a hepatitis, or no, that's not the right word.
I know what you mean.
Meningitis, a
Yeah.
meningitis induced coma.
Mm-hmm.
And because his brain was just completely encased in
Mm-hmm.
infection
Mm.
and as far as everything about our medical model, the Western medical model at the physical level can tell, he was dead
Yeah.
for days, not just minutes past what he should be, without oxygen to the brain kind of thing. He was absolutely not in a medically induced coma, in a meningitis induced coma. And he came back and said, hey, guess what? Here's all of this stuff that happened. And let me tell you what was happening in the hospital while I was, quote, dead.
Yeah.
So he had this awakening to the fact that what he thought he knew was absolutely not the whole picture.
Mm.
Well, that's what happened to Roger McFillin, who basically was like, hey, listen, if I can't see it and feel it and measure it with my five senses, it's not real. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
scientist, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to accept all these quack theories about this and that. Well,
Right.
then he had a session that demonstrated to him there's more going on here than what your five senses can teach you.
Mm.
So it
And
brings in, the question, what else is going on?
yeah.
Does this lead to practical spirituality? Does this lead to religion? Does this lead to a belief in magic? What are, these questions? What's going on here?
Mm.
And at least he's willing to learn and address these things. And he's a young guy, he's only got 25, 30 years experience doing therapy. He'll learn.
Right. Yeah.
Life will teach him and take him where it
Mm-hmm.
needs him to be,
Right. But
as
that's
long as he stays open and willing to learn from life, which is
mm-hmm.
what we're advocating here. So the answer, comes back over and over again for me, it comes back to this really practical spirituality.
Right.
And one of the people that talks so cleanly and directly about that is Michael Singer.
Yes.
And he's been
Hmm.
blessing us lately by doing podcasts on a fairly regular basis. And they're available for free. So you don't have to buy the Sounds True courses or whatever. You just get your podcast player and subscribe. And then every time he posts something, or follow him. And then when he posts something, you get a notification. And then you can
Mm.
listen if you so desire.
Mm.
And essentially, it's just there's, like Guy Finley says, there's nothing more practical than true spirituality. What if everything that's unfolding in your life, right, and everywhere you go, whatever you do, what if everything that's unfolding is going to lead directly or indirectly to some of the best things you've ever experienced in life, even if they're some of the most painful things you've ever experienced when they begin?
Mm.
Like think about any skill or achievement that you've wanted to acquire or learn, or there's a lot of effort that has to go into it, and sometimes discomfort that has to go into it.
Right.
Because I've got to either, you know, retrain my muscles to work in an entirely different way, or I've got to get a job and earn a lot of money and buy some fancy equipment to make it happen. Or, but there's, it takes effort, right? At a certain level, um, what's the old adage? Anything worth doing is worth doing well. No pain, no gain, all that kind of stuff, right? The idea is if I'm willing to put in the effort, things can get better. Well, what if you back up to where the Way of Mastery says in the first lesson, oh, by the way, the thing you're supposed to be using to guide your efforts is not your intellect. It's not your thoughts about it. It's not your analysis. It's not your logic. It's not all the stuff that's been programmed into your mind by your family and your culture and your life events. Well, then what is there? This other thing, this awakened heart, this energetic emotional connection, this state you can enter, this altered state that you can enter by asking to be taught rather than walking around with all of your certainty and knowing. Right? Remember what we talked about, what the brain scans reveal about the activity, is the mental activity in somebody who's actively questioning something, and how dramatically it shuts down when they believe they found an answer. Well, what if that high mental, awake, aware, questioning state is where we're intended to live, and that's the awakened heart state? And what if what our culture teaches us is the opposite of what's true? That, there's literally a lesson in the Way of Mastery that says the way is easy and without effort. What does that mean? That means, life is going to unfold and be okay, even if it doesn't go the way you think it should. And can you just take a look at, I think I've had two different people in my office in just this past week where I was trying to get them to understand that, yeah, they've been through a lot of things they really didn't want to go through. And yet, look at where they are and how we're actively in our sessions sometimes mapping how they got here because of the way they reacted to this or that event in their life. I don't need to say, oh, this happened for a reason. All I need to say is, this happened, and what I did with it helped me turn it into a blessing for myself and others. All kinds of other people have a similar event happen to them, and what they do with it is choose for bitterness and anger and resentment, and they don't turn it into a blessing for themselves and others. I'm not trying to say that I know that everything is going to work out just perfectly and just love is all there is. I don't know that stuff for sure, but what I know is the results I get when I refuse to judge, when I catch my judgments earlier and release them, when I choose to stay open in my energy field and question and ask to be taught rather than jumping in back into what was trained so heavily for so many decades of the judgment and the analysis and the worry about did I make the right choice. And I've just learned to just quiet that and just kind of metaphorically pat that part of myself on the head and say, here, sit over here at the little kiddie table with some Oreo cookies and milk. I'm going to just meet life as it comes and ask it to teach me what's next and what it needs or wants from me.
You stay in a safe zone by doing that. You know, I had a sister-in-law who used to say, "Oh, it was meant to be," or she would say, "You're never given anything that you can't handle." That may or may not be true, but I hate that thing. And so I'd rather just say, just stay open and don't think about it.
Yeah, stay open. And I take it the next level and ask, okay, what's mine to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, whether I'm the one that just got injured or somebody else has just got injured, um, what what could I do in this moment? What kind of an energy or attitude or action or loving energy could I add to this moment to be a blessing to myself and others? Now, if I'm in that state, I don't need to figure anything out.
Right.
I don't need to get out the Hay House books about what is this impulse that I have, a stiffness in my right shoulder. What does that mean in response to this question? And look up metaphorically, it might mean this, or if it's in my knee, it means this. Or I don't need to do any of that.
Mm.
When I'm in the moment, and my intention is to be a blessing to myself and others, and I ask how that can happen, whatever I end up doing is going to be an okay situation. It's going to be an okay contribution, and often fit together with other things in ways I could never have imagined. I mean, one of the best things that I got from growing up in the family I did was this phrase is stuck in my head. Hey, wait, this is way too important to panic about.
Mm.
Whatever situation happens, panic is not the right response to improve a situation. So I start with a breath. I start with softening. I start with asking from that calmer space that comes with a softening breath. And then I recognize that if my mind starts to go to worry or, running figures or racing thoughts, I just take another breath. And sometimes I use the EFT tapping to ground me to the idea that, wait a minute, there's a physical body here that's having this response, but I'm not going to just get distracted by it, whether it's going into an anxiety or a panic attack. I'm going to stay here and watch what the answer to my question is. If I just keep questioning, what's mine to do? How can I be a blessing to myself and others? And the more I've done that over the years, the better my experience of life has been and the better the results I've gotten when I've made certain choices. So again, it's really a big ask for most of us to shift away from this intense focus on the intellectual and the figuring it out part of your brain. But Michael Rice says, that's the number one false solution of the non-being mind, of the angry, fearful, hurt, scared mind. I'm going to figure it out. And we're offering options to that. Not really fancy, not very complicated, but options to that. So, thoughts, comments, questions from you, Susan, or anybody else who's on the call?
No, that's good though, Dr. Tim. Thanks.
You're most welcome and deserving. When we left off on Friday, we'd been doing some reading in the book by Guy Finley, the book of One Love, One Life, One Journey with Dr. Ellen Dickstein. And this is the heading of the next section is something that most Westerners absolutely hate. The title is Solitude, Your Superpower for Personal Growth. And Guy writes, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's hard not to these days. It seems like everyone is running everywhere, going places, but then they're ready to leave the moment they get there. And then they're spending time with people they may not even like that much. And they're constantly, quote, hooking up, close quotes, online on their multiple social sites. It's almost like we can't bear being by ourselves, as if there's something to fear in being alone. However, loneliness is not a necessary outcome of time spent alone. Let that sink in. Loneliness is not a necessary outcome of time spent alone. A lot of people enjoy their time alone, and they don't generate the emotion of loneliness. Ironically, he says, when speaking about loneliness, it's only a wrong relationship that we have with our own ideas about what being alone means that causes us to fear it. So we have a wrong relationship with our ideas about what it means to be alone. And then we generate fear because we're misperceiving or misjudging something. He writes, and because of that fear, we miss out on one of life's greatest opportunities. The truth is, being alone holds beautiful possibilities for the person who is open to them. Only when we're by ourselves, free of distraction and the pull of the world, only there can there be a conscious relationship between the true self within us, and the true self is in caps, and the divine above us. So the true self within us and the divine above us are always connected and they're always in a relationship, but we can't be aware of that unless we're willing to slow down and put the distractions aside. Being alone is the nourishing space and place where our soul can receive what it needs to flower. It's where truths are revealed that can transform us. It's a kind of homecoming, coming home. The value of being alone has been expressed by sages across the centuries. Here are some examples. Hafez says, don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as a few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. Something in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear. He quotes Henry David Thoreau as saying, I never found a companion that was so companionable as solitude. And Thomas Merton writes, this is a country whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. You do not find it by traveling, but by standing still. Yet it is in this loneliness that the deepest activities begin. It is here that you discover act without motion, labor that is profound repose, vision in obscurity, and beyond all, desire, a fulfillment whose limits extend to infinity. Blaise Pascal's quoted as saying, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Guy says, here's an insight on the negative effects of the compulsion to always be going and doing. And then he quotes Blaise Pascal as saying, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And this is probably where Dale Allen Hoffman gets his practice that he recommends to people, to sit alone in their bedroom in the dark for 2 hours with no incense and no ritual and no meditation plan, just to sit. Guy Finley writes, what a great reminder of the value of setting aside time to be by ourselves and not resenting life when it doesn't provide us with a diversion or a companion. We can use these moments to start fulfilling a different purpose in life, our truer purpose of discovering who we really are. We can begin to develop a pool of silence within ourselves that we can then carry into every moment, even a crowded room, so that every moment is enriched. Nothing is missing. Nothing is missing from our lives except for our not yet awakened ability to see this essential truth. Just as fire needs wood to express its warmth and light, so too do we need the, quote, darkness, close quotes, of what we have yet to understand about ourselves. It rarely occurs to us, but there is a greater potential in what we don't know yet about this life of ours than there is in what we've already seen about it. So this makes my head spin a little bit, so I'll read that again. It rarely occurs to us, right? But this leads me into the way of mastery and their description of and recommendation for us to step into the awareness of our divine ignorance. He says, it rarely occurs to us, but there is a greater potential in what we don't yet know about this life than there is in what we've already seen about it. In other words, we're just barely scratching the surface of life and understanding and ourselves and the nature of the universe that we live in, and even the nature of the very bodies that we inhabit. But we, especially from the Western culture and tradition, we're taught to focus almost exclusively on what we have already learned and stored on what Michael Ryce would call the 9-bit mind, the carbon-based memory, the brain in my head that acts like a hard drive. It just records what's pumped into it and then plays it back out when it's called up later. We focus almost exclusively on that and not exploring what the other senses might be. People like David E. Martin, who are trying to figure out, okay, wait a minute, what if there's a different perceptual sense for each of the 12 cranial nerves? And we've only mapped out the first 5 that are very solid and easily measured and felt and quantified. But what if the other 7 cranial nerves are there to help us access different energies and different awarenesses and different ways to interact with our environment? So Guy goes on and says, so this great undiscovered territory, this, quote, darkness, close quotes, within us. Now notice that they're not saying dark as in bad and evil. They're saying it's just undiscovered. It's not a bad thing. Darkness, in this sense, what they're talking about isn't bad. It's not the evil stuff. It's not even the unripe stuff. It's just the stuff that we aren't willing to look at. The darkness within us, right? Not the evil within us. Just that part of our lives, our awareness, our consciousness that we haven't discovered yet. So he writes, so this great undiscovered territory, also called darkness, is there for a distinctly divine purpose. It exists as it does to serve the light that reveals it. For in each such revelation, there is a simultaneous realization and a release of a new order of consciousness. So in each time we turn the focus of our conscious awareness, that light, onto a part of our history, our experience that we have not wanted to look at, there's this expansion of our consciousness. There's a release of a new order of consciousness. There's a potential to then integrate that information or that experience. So Guy writes, any thought of a feeling, any thought or feeling that troubles us in mind or heart, any fear or worry, is like a candle not yet lit. What purpose has any flame or light in any form we may find it, other than to enter into and transform what is dark into more of itself? So the purpose of light is just to extend light. The purpose of life is to create and extend itself. The purpose of love is to extend itself. He goes on. For instance, we may turn around one day and find ourselves caught up in the dark grip of some kind of fear. Perhaps we see the one we love, quote, looking the other way, close quotes. Maybe a phone call delivers uncertain news about our deteriorating health. Or someone tells us about a forthcoming change at work that threatens our sense of security. Now, in moments such as these, our future grows as dark as it seems, full of loneliness, worry, and loss. We see that all of this may be coming our way, but our lives do not need to be swallowed up in unconscious servitude to this kind of suffering. We have another choice if we are willing to dare to be still in the light. There's a way to practice realizing the truth of your capital S self that begins with remembering to make the new choice that follows. And here's the new choice. Instead of surrendering yourself to its punishing presence, bring your loneliness into the light, capital L light, of your capital S self. If you will remain there within your awareness of this, quote, darkness, close quotes, here's what you'll see take place before your inner eyes. The fear of being alone will be transformed into the contentment of knowing that you've never been without the love that you long for. You will see that a tenderness beyond words lives within the capital L light you have embraced. You cannot control the way the world turns. We cannot change day into night. We cannot keep what is not ours. And we cannot hide these facts from ourselves no matter how hard we try. And yet, what we are given to do, and that turns out to be the one power of ours, truly capable of transforming the whole of life, is that we can choose moment to moment to be the light of our capital S self. So here it is. I have this two-point statement I like to make to people. I say, I'd like to tell you two things about yourself. If you're like most of us human beings, then these two things are going to be true about you. The first one is you have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment. And the second point is, it is the focus of your conscious awareness in each new present moment that actually creates your experience of life. Now, I say that so often for years now. I've got copies of it printed. I hand it to people in my office because they say, oh, it's too complicated, I can't remember it. But Guy Finley has it summarized poetically as goes my attention, so comes my experience. It's the same wisdom. It's the same observation. And that's the same point that I get from this. What we are given to do is all we can do. And that turns out to be the one power of ours that's truly capable of transforming the whole of life. What is that? We can choose moment to moment to be the light of our capital S self. We can choose where we point that light of awareness, of consciousness, of focus, of intention and attention. He writes, we are created as co-creators of all that we become and we can be conscious of within ourselves. It is our right to be in relationship with only those powers whose presence serves our chosen purpose in life, which is to be one with that light, to understand that we are one with that light and consciously extend it, consciously share it, or consciously share our awareness of it. We are created as co-creators of all that we can be conscious of within ourselves. It is our right to be in relationship with only those powers whose presence serves our chosen purpose in life. Now, if you haven't created a chosen purpose in your life, Dr. Michael Ryce has some input on that. He has a worksheet that you can download from whyagain.org that's titled the Secondary Purpose Worksheet from the lecture Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. And if you haven't chosen your own, Guy Finley's suggesting here that our true purpose is to be one with the light, to be conscious, to move to greater consciousness about how we've never been disconnected from our source. And in that conscious awareness, it severely limits what we can do. In other words, from that space of conscious awareness, we can't do something that will intentionally be harmful to someone else, ourselves, or anybody else. So there's great value in creating whatever willingness is needed to see the truth for what it is, even when it goes in different directions from what I would like it to be, and allow it, accept it, embrace it, surrender it to it, trust it, and therefore transcend it. Therefore, not have your life experience created unilaterally by whatever's happening on the outside or whatever judgment you might have placed on the outside. When you cancel the judgment, it's like the Course in Miracles says, the upset that you experience, the disruption in your life that comes from an error in thought will persist only as long as the thought that gave rise to it is cherished. In other words, is focused on with intent by the mind of the person who's focusing on it, cherishing it, or feeling the negative effects. So at another point it says, all of the effects of your errors in thought will be eliminated when you return to the original error and see it as false. Now, that could only mean, to my way of thinking, that can only mean that the negative effects I'm feeling are the byproduct of where I'm pointing my mind energy. And when I quit pointing my mind energy over there, I quit creating this negative effect that I don't like. Sally, did you unmute for a purpose?
I apologize. I did, but I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right. Well, that is the end of our hour. So I will thank everyone for being here and remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else false. Everything else is false. Blessings. Thanks for being here.